From the studios of the Optimism Institute, welcome to Blue Sky, where we share stories and insights to remind us that there is always blue sky above. Sometimes you just have to get your head above the clouds to see it. I'm your host, Bill Burke. For all of us, life is full of moments that change our path. In the case of today's Blue Sky guest, one of these was a dramatic turn of events that happened to him and his family on September 11th, 2001. In the time since then, he's dedicated his life to helping improve the world by optimizing the power of volunteerism by improving the experience of volunteers. Sam Fankuchen is the founder and CEO of Golden, an organization whose team is described on their website as a passionate group of technologists, community builders, and support specialists dedicated to helping volunteers connect with meaningful opportunities and empowering organizers to run impactful, efficient programs with ease. Sam Fankuchen was the first undergraduate student to major in social entrepreneurship at Stanford. He wrote his master's thesis on optimizing the volunteer and donor life cycle while studying at the Stanford D School, and actively collaborates with University College London, Microsoft, and Stanford Human-Centered AI Lab around artificial intelligence for advancing human quality of life. Sam has spoken on social entrepreneurship, cross-sector collaboration, disaster relief, and digital ethics at the United Nations, Stanford, Harvard, UPenn, USC, America's Service Commissions, and he's testified before the Congressional Commission on National, Military, and Public Service. Sam holds board and advisory positions with the Engage Journal, Webby and Anthem Awards, Gates Greater Giving Summit, Giving Tuesday, and the Giving Platform Collaborative. I hope you enjoy this Blue Sky conversation with Sam Fankuchen as much as I did. Sam Fankuchen, welcome to the Blue Sky Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
It's great to have you today, and I've been looking forward to this conversation. I enjoy talking to people about their backgrounds and their early years because more often than not, it has a lot to do with what they're doing today. And I know you've been asked about this before, but we all have know where we are moments with 9/11. And I was really struck by your 9/11 story, not only how dramatic it was, but then also just how very personal it was. And it seems to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that it had a profound influence on your life. So if it's appropriate, I'd love to start there, and you could just sort of tell us what happened to you on that terrible day.
Sure. It would be my pleasure to share, although pleasure is probably not the right word to say, but to add as much levity as can be added to a situation like that. It was a day I wasn't expecting, the same way everybody else wasn't expecting it. And for me, I had grown up in Southern California, but my family was originally from the East Coast. And so I was given an opportunity in high school to go somewhere else for high school on the East Coast. And my parents and three siblings dropped me off, and we were going to go out to dinner the night before. And I just kind of didn't feel like it. So I told them I'd see them the next day. And I walked up to class the first day in this new school on the East Coast and went up to the building where the class was supposed to be, and the front doors were chained shut. And at a very low altitude above where we were, there was a formation of very slowly flying F-15s. And we all went into the auditorium instead of into class and started to learn, as most people did, wherever they were, about all the events as they were happening. And at the time, everybody in my family had been scheduled on a American Airlines Flight 11 back to Los Angeles from Boston. We learned that was one of the flights that was hijacked. And everybody was learning different things. My roommate at the time's dad worked in one of the buildings. There was somebody else we were close to who was a flight attendant on one of those planes, and so many other stories. And so we just kept learning more and more. Of course, the news never got better. It only got worse. And then days later, I learned that my family had gone standby. the night before because we didn't go out to dinner, and they just hadn't told me. It didn't occur to me they would do that. I would never imagine that there'd be 5 seats available the night before on this flight. And living through all those experiences, but especially the ones so close to me, I went through a whole journey that then got unwound. It felt very surreal, but it never went away. And because once you know what those feelings feel like, you carry them and you see them everywhere else. You never feel relieved. It didn't, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised at how things changed for me, but it didn't change the fact that I know everyone else who was going through those experiences, or somebody else's family got thrust into this when they wouldn't have gone on that flight, or, the things you think about. And the only thing that really mattered is this lasting feeling of, if you're going through a revealing situation like that, where you understand the human condition really differently, every assumption you have in life changes instantly. What's important? And what do you see in other people in the way that they're going about their life that seems important or meaningful? And I just, especially in an environment where people are so focused on their future in high school, you sometimes see people who have certain ideas in mind, and maybe those are good ideas. You see a lot of people who are figuring it out, and a lot who are maybe doing things that aren't genuine, but were kind of thrust upon them. And for me, I just had a huge reaction and a sense of distancing where I just didn't want to be around people pursuing things that weren't genuinely meaningful to them. And I didn't know what was meaningful to me, but I wanted to figure out what there could be. And that led me to be eventually interested in volunteering. Although, ironically, most of the people I knew who were volunteering weren't doing it because they wanted to. They were doing it because they were trying to get into a good college, or they got in trouble, or their religious group told them to do it, or something like that. And so I didn't understand the appeal at first. Eventually, I understood the appeal. And then I started to get really serious about finding things and doing things. And the process just felt so complicated and so detached. It's like nobody wanted me there because I was young or inexperienced, or I needed to prove myself, instead of just saying, like, just give me a place to start, which is really mentally where most people are in their journey. And that set me on this whole career to figure out how to make it easier for people to do meaningful things. And then also for programs that organize volunteers and supporters to have a real-time understanding of who they're engaging, what they're doing, how they're progressing toward their mission, not just doing the work. I always get asked this question about the founder story. Which I'm happy to share because it's unusual and kind of poignant, and people remember it. But the weird thing is, then going through that experience in life, sometimes you have other unfortunate events that rear their head when you don't expect them. And for my family in our office last year, we were displaced by the wildfires in Los Angeles. That felt very similar. Nobody that morning, because the way that storm worked, and I can tell you because we do a lot of disaster relief at Golden, and we're around a lot of organizers that do it in different ways too, or we partner with them. There are no two disasters that are the same. There may be a hurricane, and you can prepare for a hurricane knowing certain things, but you're going to learn as you go. This storm was very different for a number of reasons. One was the speed with which it moved. It came from nowhere. Within 20 minutes, we knew it was going to take a lot of Los Angeles because of the scale of the winds. The second was it was not controllable. There was no sense of how it was going to be controlled for many, many days. It was an enormous response. And even with an enormous response, the damages exceeded all but very few other fires in recorded history. And that reminded me of 9/11 and in a lot of different ways. And the lessons all come back. A third one like that is COVID. Again, we kind of a sense it was going to be large. We didn't exactly know how long it was going to last. It clearly damaged a lot. The economy, households, lives, governments, all kinds of things. And you just learn a lot. And once you have that pattern, it can help inform like a really, really optimized response to whatever the situation calls for. For me, understanding the imprint that those experiences had on my life, I knew that I didn't just want to talk about them or look into them. I wanted to contribute in a way that was absent from the experience that I had in the form of entrepreneurship. And even just this morning, I read a statistic that on LinkedIn in the last year, there's been a 69% increase of the percent of people who've added the word founder to their title. Because of AI and because of our awareness of the world around us, hypersensitive awareness, kind of the way I had, but in everybody's own ways, the barriers to entry for being an entrepreneur are lower. The call to do something meaningful for a quickly changing world is higher. And so we're seeing more people move into entrepreneurship. It doesn't make the experience of being an entrepreneur any less challenging, but certainly the barriers are lower for technology and for reaching an audience. And that is exciting if we have the right insights that drive quality of life improvements, not just doing technology or entrepreneurship for the sake of doing it. Just like doing volunteering for the sake of doing it is an empty mission. But if you have an insight or something you just envision working really differently, then it's a good time where I think human civilization and your local community could probably benefit from your insight.
What happened to Sam Fankuchen and his family on 9/11 would make an impact on anyone. But for a change in plans and switching flights, his parents and 3 siblings would have been on one of the hijacked planes. An amazing story. Experiencing the trauma of that day helped Sam respond to the wildfires in Los Angeles many years later. A great example of the silver linings that can come from some of the more tragic and scary moments in our lives. Sam is clearly a technophile, and I was interested in what he said about the huge growth in the number of people who identify themselves as founders. These opportunities were made possible in large part by newer technologies. In fact, yours truly is an example of one of these people, and my ability to record this very episode and then reach all of you with it would not have been possible not too long ago. Now, back to our conversation. So you mentioned a personal experience trying to get involved in volunteering and finding it surprisingly hard to do. And it's one of those things you think about, it's like someone is literally volunteering to come to work for you. And somehow there are barriers created. So can you talk about, I believe if my research is right, it started with a company called Pinwheel, and now it's Golden. Can you talk about how you saw that and thought, okay, I need to personally do something about it? And then what did you do? What was Pinwheel? And maybe you can describe the work that's evolved into Golden.
I think it's easiest to describe this from firsthand experience and what my observation was at the time, what I felt, probably why I felt those things. And then we can talk into the progression of the companies rather than being in an abstract way. So as a 17-year-old in high school, which is an age when a lot of people think about volunteering, and maybe you're a Mormon and you're about to go on a mission, or maybe you're preparing to graduate and there's a requirement, something like that. And so in 2000, I guess it would have been like 2003 or so when I was really in that mindset. There were places to go to volunteer. I could go to the school and ask them if they had a list. I could go to a United Way. I could look online. There were websites at the time to find volunteer opportunities. I could ask religious groups. And usually what I would get is a list or directed someplace that effectively had a yellow pages of nonprofits. And from that point, you have to figure out what the difference between 2 nonprofits that sound similar is. Is one better than the other if you're interested in ecology or homeless services? And then you have to figure out who's in charge, get a hold of them. At that time, most people weren't using email. There was not like a lot of technology in nonprofits. So that meant phone calls during business hours, waiting to hear back. At that point, there's some kind of evaluation process, whether it happened on the phone or you had to come in or you had to fill out forms. The methodology at the time was an application-driven intake process where, frankly, you have to prove yourself. And the questions they might ask could be conventional. It could be, do you have experience doing this? What is your emergency contact number? or it could be extremely unconventional. And you can imagine that if people weren't even using email at that time, were they following any kind of best practice? Does anybody educate nonprofit leaders on what they should and shouldn't do from a safety perspective or a respect perspective or a professionalism or productivity perspective? The answer is generally not. And so if right now there's between 1.7 and 2 million nonprofit organizations in the US, at the time there's probably somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5 million. They were all running totally different processes, not the same process. A lot of them unprofessional, inaccurate for what they were getting at, complicated, turning people away, and dangerously, many times collecting personal information and leaving it in a vulnerable state, like collecting a social security number or how many dependents you have and what their names and ages are, and leaving that on a desk or a piece of paper that somebody else without authorization could see or do something harmful with. Everywhere, there were things like that. And from the perspective of me, the willing and interested participant, what that looked like was, where do I go to get started? How do I get a hold of somebody? How long do I have to wait? What comes next? How much information do I have to give them? Do I have to prove myself as being capable? Are they going to make me pay to volunteer? Do I have to do a background check? Does that mean I have to drive someplace and pay $75 to get my fingerprints taken and leave that on somebody's desk and then do it again the next time I go someplace different? Do I have to commit for 6 months in advance? Do I need a certain skill? Do I have to prove that I have that skill? And that just, to your point, it feels like a lot of work. And even worse than that, it feels totally misaligned and inappropriate. And like somebody, whether they were aware or unaware, who's running a program like that is just trying to turn people away and like killing that spark of interest and joy, which is unfortunate. But I think if you talk to, even today, if you talk to younger people, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, people who are just figuring this out for the first time, they may even say with today's technologies, it feels a little bit hard. Back then it felt harder, but we still have kind of gaps to close. And if you were to interview a volunteer manager, what they might say, and again, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but in my own master's research, these are the kinds of pieces of feedback I would regularly encounter. I don't want volunteers because that seems like work. I'm going to have to do work to find them, and then I'm going to have to evaluate them and train them, and then they're not going to come back, and then I'm going to have to repeat it. Volunteers are not donors. I'd rather spend that time working on donors, people who pay the bills for us. Volunteers are not skilled. They do not understand how to advance the core mission. Volunteers are there for vanity reasons and don't understand the needs of the beneficiaries we support through our programs. Volunteers are too young and distractible. They're not trustworthy. We don't know if they're going to follow through with what they make a commitment to follow through and do. They may say all these things, and those things may be true. But you know what else is also true? Volunteers are the most valuable donors. Volunteers are the ones who come and lend some kind of resource. And if you're not specific enough to tell them what resources to lend, you're not going to get them. If you don't ask, the answer is no, And volunteers have their eyes on your mission and they know what you need to get to the mission. And volunteers know people who share their values and can activate them. And volunteers can tell your story. And volunteers can do so much more. And if you're hung up on what the cost is instead of the benefit, you're never going to get the benefit. And the benefit loses value every minute that you wait. And so not just having volunteers, but having an easy way to engage volunteers in targeted, meaningful activities that get more meaningful over time is the secret to unlocking a healthy ecosystem for any kind of mission-driven org. If you can't share what you do with the outside world, it becomes really difficult to get buy-in from people who see no proof in what you say you do.
A handful of my guests on Blue Sky have described themselves as social entrepreneurs, people who build companies and organizations designed specifically to improve people's lives and the world in general. Like new technology, social entrepreneurship is relatively new on the scene, and it's great to see capable people like Sam Fankuchen diving into this space and making such a strong impact. To hear more about that and the company Sam has founded, Let's get back to our conversation.
So Golden is a technology company. We provide technology that could be software, AI, other services to individuals who want to live in their quote unquote golden moments through acts of service in all their forms. That can mean volunteering, fundraising, advocacy, peer-to-peer work and mutual aid, all kinds of other things. And so we give them technology that personalizes actionable opportunities in real time so that they can engage, and we can help them keep track of and develop these interests throughout their life in whatever pattern makes sense. So if you're fulfilling student service learning to graduate, maybe you need to knock out 40 hours. Or if you're in an Alcoholics Anonymous program, maybe you need to do something every day. Or if you love chess and you want to find a way to play chess with people, to teach them chess, all of those patterns are different and all of them are appropriate. And you may have more than one. And so that's where AI is very helpful, because conventional technology can get you so far in terms of giving results, acting on results, tracking results. But AI can make those results progressively more relevant. They can extract the depth of your experience and give you more of what you want and less of what you don't want. They can help you really capture and meet what you have in your mind's eye for what fulfillment looks like. We also provide what's called freemium SaaS, or free and paid software, for people who want to recruit, screen, schedule, track, re-engage volunteers and donors with and without AI. And the idea is, for anyone who's on a mission, we can give you turnkey, fully compliant, globally award-winning tools to do those things easily, and to help you look at real data without having to know how data necessarily works to make better decisions. Or you can be a mission critical industrial scale program, whether that's a government or public service organization or a company or anybody else. And we can give you super rich data with the right permissions in real time that you can use to power all kinds of other systems, whether those are business intelligence systems or AI systems, CRMs, ERPs, et cetera. And not have to worry about how would we find this information? How would we validate it? How would we organize it in a way that allows automation with other activities and tools? And we can help do all that. So at the high level, when we're working with, Salvation Army or International Rescue Committee or UNICEF, those are the goals an organization like that might have. Not every organization does. But sometimes there are ways that you can help populations that you would just never know based on raw user feedback. You would have to look at data at scale and start to find patterns that the human eye may not recognize, or the human mind may not be trained to go and identify. And we don't know what all those are. But what we do know is we would like to have the right tools to help us make those decisions, whether it's in an emergency setting or in everyday life or a long-term planning setting. And we'd love to do it in a way that uplifts quality of life for everybody. So we're starting with this kind of approach to the tech.
Amazing. So you've mentioned AI several times, and in really each mention has been a fairly positive one. You're someone who I take as an AI optimist, and as we know, not everybody is. So I'd love to hear your take on how you see AI lifting people up, being a positive, and why you're so bullish on a technology that scares so many people.
Yeah, and I'll drive really hard at this because there are a lot of different ways to say it. I am an AI optimist. I'm certainly aware of the risks of AI. But apart from being an AI optimist, I'm just an optimist. I think the world always seems complicated. Objectively speaking, it's more complicated right now, probably, than it's been in a while. And we also live in a world where AI is certainly here and is never going back. And I think a lot of people who get hung up on, positive outcomes, negative outcomes, are delaying acceptance of a certain reality. For those who study AI or live with AI, use it or don't use it, the ones who spend a lot of time are probably farther advanced than some others on understanding that reality. But it's like the internet, it's like electricity. You may not adopt it, but you live in a world with it. And AI has the power to do so many positive things. And, one example that people cite a lot is Elon Musk's very bullish prediction that there's going to be more than enough money for everyone to do everything. So now we just need to figure out, there's more than enough money for everyone to survive and thrive. So now we just need to figure out what to do with human beings. And there's certainly far less optimistic visions of the future. There are a lot of doomsday predictions about artificial general intelligence and what happens when the machines start to dictate to humans what the future looks like. And these are risks and possibilities. I'm still going to be an optimist because I hope that the people who've spent their careers developing these things have some kind of vision in mind about the future they'd like to live in and the people they care about live in, or what humans are capable of doing. And we're going to have to figure out what it's like to work through these things. But just drawing lines in the sand and saying, ethically, this is the way it should work, or this is my point of view, sends a message, and it may be a negotiating tactic, but it doesn't necessarily change the fact that somebody in a different venue could make a different decision, or that everything you've considered in your logic may be an incomplete set of background. And that's where things get really challenging and where optimism gets challenged the most. But, my grandmother once said in a very different setting that faith begins where understanding ends. And this is, you could say that with total confidence and say that the message is it's all about faith, or you could say it in a kind of biting way to say like, well, you just have faith because you don't understand. And there's shades of gray, but there has to be some degree of faith and some degree of moving things in the right direction and considering consequences, but also making decisions and moving on. Because if you can arrive at what you think is the right decision and then you wait, well, then the value of that decision is diminished. So you have to consider the information, decide quickly, be in a position to change, while also de-risking wherever you can consequences that would be totally catastrophic.
I like the way Sam describes helping people facilitate golden moments through acts of service. What a great mission to pursue. And I really like what Sam's mom said. Faith begins where understanding ends. This is a great way to think about the faith we sometimes need to have in each other to stay optimistic in challenging times and to keep moving the world forward. Now to the final segment of this Blue Sky conversation with Golden founder and CEO, Sam Fankuchen. A lot of people say, well, where are humans going to be as AI takes off? And I think one of the key places humans are going to be around these ethics and what are the guardrails and who sets them and how. And I had a great conversation on this show with Sal Khan of Khan Academy and talking about the work he's doing with AI in education. And, a lot of, especially the AI pessimists, you say AI in education, the first thing they say, well, kids are going to cheat on every test or kids are going to plagiarize every paper. And Sal's not stupid and he's figured out ways around that, but he's doing things with AI in education that are astounding and could be so impactful. And he gave me a term that you may have heard, and I don't know if it's original to him, but he said, I encourage people to approach this technology with educated bravery. And I thought it was a nice way of saying it. It's like, we shouldn't be fearful. We should have some fear, but we should be educated and we should be brave and we should keep pushing ahead. And I'm wondering how that lands with you.
It resonates.
Yeah.
People would say you shouldn't use a calculator, you shouldn't use a computer, all these things.
Exactly.
Why? It would be helpful to know what to do if that technology failed, or to test the assumption that the technology wasn't proving out effectively or optimally or correctly in context. And that takes skill development and pattern recognition. But to miss the big picture of the unpredictably valuable benefits of innovation and new technologies, artificial intelligence, and waste time to capturing that value or learning how to work with the tools of the day is a missed opportunity. And I think about my own development, and I've got 2 kids and I'm learning more about my kids because they're 1 and 4. But everybody learns differently. And whether they're labeled as neurodivergent or whether they don't have the same academic opportunities or whether they have different demands on their life that change the way that they learn, why not meet people where they are and help them advance at the pace and the direction in the ways that are appropriate? I mean, that seems to me like if you had a counter opinion, and everyone has a right to have that and should, so that we can make better decisions. But if you were a hardliner about saying it's pen and paper, it's classrooms all the time, that might come at the cost of depriving a reasonable education to people who've been left at the fray, let alone giving anyone who's curious an opportunity to learn more and differently and faster and more collaboratively. But there's also arguments that by losing classroom structure or diminishing it or having screens everywhere, that it's harder to train focus, and there's certain parts of academic careers that become a lot harder to advance in later in life. And those things are true too. We could keep learning, make better choices, but I don't see why you would turn off the lights on AI.
Exactly. So on Golden, if someone's listening to this, it sounds like your customers are both individuals looking to get involved and volunteer and pursue their sort of social impact passions. And then there are also the Salvation Armies and presumably smaller nonprofits who are trying to make it, more frictionless to get people involved. How can someone, become a customer? What are some of the offerings that you would provide to someone who is interested in using your services?
Very kind of you to ask the commercial question, Bill.
Have to.
So
you got to merchandise the merchandise.
Yeah. Anyone who's so inclined can go to goldenvolunteer.com, and you can sign up in seconds for free to get a dashboard to recruit, screen, schedule, track, re-engage volunteers, donors, other participants. You can also go to any app store, iOS, Android, or go online, use the web, and find volunteer opportunities through the Golden app for free and sign up and go. If you are at the enterprise scale, or you're thinking about business implications of having technology like this, we also offer self-serve plans and enterprise scale plans where the sky is the limit for what you can do with the technology. We actively support governments and disaster orgs and healthcare institutions and so forth with this exact same technology, just delivered in an environment that's appropriate. And you can always reach out to support at goldenvolunteer.com or hello@goldenvolunteer.com and have a friendly conversation if that would be helpful to you. We also have 24/7 chatbots that are really good on all of our products that can get you a lot of this information. You may have also seen that last year we made a commitment in light of a lot of different changing funding strategies that affected the social sector, either directly or indirectly. So it could be government funding, foreign aid funding, and or even foundation funding, because foundations filled a lot of gaps all over the world, not just in the US, for changing government funding strategies. And so there have been a lot of institutional pressures on the philanthropic system in the last year. We tried to do our part to unblock those pressures by donating $500 million worth of software licenses to institutions who were directly or indirectly affected by their budgeting in an unforeseen way. It's kind of a disaster event for them. I think the sector will come out stronger just based on what we've seen so far. Not saying it was a good or bad thing to do, but everybody who's a funder reserves the right to change funding. We live in the real world. This is not an academic exercise. And folks who learn how to prevail and build a community and deliver where there are genuine needs are going to get resources as long as they can demonstrate what they're doing. And we wanted to set them on their way. So if you go to usaidrelief.com or .org, or usaidrelief.com or .org, or AmeriCorpsRelief.com or .org, you can find those commitments, or you can, again, reach out to us. And if you're eligible for them, we'd be delighted to give you some software licenses. Or if there are just questions you have about a real strategic goal, we may know somebody who can be helpful, even if it's not us. We support over 50,000 organizations directly, but many more indirectly. And we just want to be a part of an ecosystem that delivers higher quality of life for everybody.
Incredible. Well, you've been part of this ecosystem for some time now, and I'm curious to know, sort of in this arc of your career where you are now, are you more bullish on the sort of social impact nonprofit doing good work segment. They have been buffeted in the last year by funding cuts and that sort of thing. But like you said, a lot of people have stepped up to fill the gaps. How do you look at that, and how do you see the next, say, 10 years playing out in the general space?
A short version is very optimistically. The longer version is, as long as I've known myself to be a social entrepreneur, which let's say was since the earliest days in college when I discovered the field, I've wrestled with the definition of social entrepreneur, as I think many who teach the subject have. To me, a social entrepreneur is somebody who understands the capabilities of creating a new venture to apply them toward improving quality of life. That's a very broad definition that can apply to any sector. And because the tools have gotten so good and the barriers are so low to doing entrepreneurial things, whether it's with a new venture or as an entrepreneur within an existing institution, it's a very good time to start solving problems and demonstrating value. And it can be very quick for users to adopt things, whether it's technology or otherwise, when they see an improvement that they can gain. I think all of that's great. There has been a lot of dogma over the years about, having a moral superiority or a different sense of whose work is considered good work or like what doing good is. And every time I hear general language like do good for a good cause or make a difference or in the community, to me, that's an abstraction and a watered down perspective on what it means to actually make advancements. A different way to say those things that's much more precise and I think valuable would be, here's an opportunity I see and how I want to solve it, or what we can do, or here's a point of friction that we can approach in a different way, or in this specific community under these circumstances, here's something that feels like an injustice or an inefficiency. And that's entrepreneurship, which is like having a real insight and being able to start prototyping and experimenting with alternatives to see if you can create a better reality or a broader market or more sustained value. And that's where I think we get really excited. We do something abstract. We provide technology that we thought was missing, that should be essential in an ecosystem. But people use that technology to do very specific things. And when we're analyzing what the success of our platform is, there's some general metrics we look at, but we also look at very concrete cohorts. In this setting, with this population, under these circumstances, did we improve what we're doing? And it's not an exercise we do quarterly or annually. We're building hyper intelligent systems to ask these questions and optimize it as we go. For example, there's a company called Fixer AI, Fyxer AI, and they've had a very AI forward product led growth approach to user adoption. They went from something like $1 million in annual recurring revenue to $50 million in 1 year because they ran 500 experiments. And when you're running those experiments, it doesn't mean you look at your calendar, schedule 2 weeks out, put one experiment, reflect on it. It means you have a series of thoughts in an organized, construct, and you start progressively testing and iterating on those thoughts and ideating on them, running them in parallel, being specific, writing better prompts. And we're just in an era like that where our metabolism was always fast. But now we're challenging everyone on our team to do things at hyper speed. We don't hire people that don't have a positive outlook on AI and understand the challenges associated with pursuing the opportunities there. And we don't expect people to be perfect, but we really want them to be motivated to do their life's work. And so we've been able to accomplish a huge amount with a very small team because of that philosophy and because of our practices around adopting technology and not being dogmatic about defending things for the sake of defending them.
Amazing. Sam, thank you so much for your time. And I appreciate everything you're doing. You're clearly an incredibly bright and entrepreneurial person. And the fact that you've placed your talents and your energies in the space that you have makes me feel great. And I know I learned a lot from this. I think our audience will too. And you're going to get some new converts to Golden, I've no doubt. And I know you're busy, and I really appreciate you working out this time with me.
It's really kind of you. And, there are a lot of podcasts out there, but it's different to speak with somebody who really wants to help bring out the best of what's available. And I don't know if I offered anything that's quote unquote the best. And maybe some people would claim that. We've got a very crowded trophy shelf to point to, but having a real conversation in a way that can hopefully meet an audience where the audience is and help them think about things in a more inspiring and motivating way. If we can be any part of that, then we're delighted to. And thank you for the service of offering that to others.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, Bill.
Golden is a great example of a company stepping up to help nonprofits continue to survive and thrive in the face of funding cutbacks by donating $500 million in software licensing. Amazing. And when it comes to AI, Sam understands the potential downsides of these technologies, but embraces the idea of continuing to study and iterate and move forward into this new world with a spirit of educated bravery. I hope you enjoyed this Blue Sky conversation with Sam Fankuchen. Before you go, please leave us a rating review. These help us keep making our shows better and also make it easier for others to find us. And while you're at it, you might want to subscribe to Blue Sky wherever you get your podcasts. Sign up for the Blue Sky Weekend newsletter at theoptimisminstitute.com. And of course, follow us on social media. This and all Blue Sky episodes were made possible by the editing and mixing done by the fantastic team at Sound On, Sound Off. You can learn more about their work at soundonsoundoff.com. All graphic design and cover art for Blue Sky and the Optimism Institute are provided by Crush Graphics. That's Crush with a K, if you'd like to check out more of their fantastic work at crushgraphics.com. Until next time, I'm the founder of the Optimism Institute and host of Blue Sky, Bill Burke, and I thank you for listening.